And let's talk to Johan and really looking at the rental market forces that are playing out at the moment, and really, I think, shaping the future of rental asset management here as well. Property increasingly unaffordable, the high interest rate environment which we've endured. There was that huge boom in property sales that happened sort of 2020, 2021 as interest rates were so low, suddenly ownership was more affordable than rental and people went in and lots of people got burned as a result. We've now come through this very high inflation rate environment and this belief that interest rates are going to get cut at some point. They've got to be, and then deferring the cuts and pushing them out further and further. And it's making rentals more and more attractive, I suppose, in this sort of frame, Johan. Just take us through the rental market forces that are playing out at the moment.
Bruce, thank you very much. And to Dani, laying some foundational slides about the approach we're going to take today to analyze this market and help the customers to understand the forces that's shaping specifically now the rental asset management industry. Bruce, you're the financial expert, and you've just said that the economy, in a nutshell, is in dire straits. And that's really bad for most businesses, but not for the rental business. Looking at some of the latest rental stats, the rental management market is in a healthy condition. Looking at quarterly, within WeconnectU, our quarterly escalations on rent, we are above the percentage before COVID, 6.4% quarterly escalations, taking average rent now to just over 9,000. So those two stats confirming to us that demand is increasing, and that's nationally throughout the country. Over and above that, we're sitting with a generation we call generation rents. They are typically in their 20s or 30s. They prefer flexibility and the freedom of renting a property, don't want to own it. Renting is in principle obviously more cost effective. And the reality, especially in South Africa, is that most of these people are priced out of the market and physically can't get a home loan to buy a property. So from a market perspective, the market is in an incredible good condition and is growing. The latest stats was that there's currently 3.6 million people renting. And with this market conditions, it's increasing every single day. If we take basic numbers and we equate that to what the value is for the property managers today in the market, we're sitting at a 32 billion rand industry up for grabs and growing. Now, the rentals has been what I always refer to as the grudge service in the industry. Most clients typically focus on sales, and rentals has been, unfortunately, that grudge service. I'm going to call on Alan Usher and Barry Davis to join me. Both of them have been in the industry for more than 20 years. They've seen the ups and downs in the industry. And I'm going to ask Barry first. Barry, give us your state of the nation of the property market as it is today. And what is your advice on the fellow business owners sitting listening today, and how should they navigate their business through the storm and also hopefully seize this opportunity or the silver lining in the rental space?
Well, thanks, Johan. Yeah, and thanks to Team WeconnectU for the invitation. I'm hoping I'm not here just for comedic light relief. It looks like I'm the oldest person on the panel. I will let you know, folks, I'm actually only 25, but I've been doing rentals for 5 years. If you look at the economic climate at the moment as a weather forecast, I think it's definitely chilly with lots of cloud cover, with Gauteng probably bearing the brunt of the cold front right now. But after 30 years in the industry, I can tell you one thing that I am certain of is that the sun keeps coming up every day. And it just seems to come up a little bit stronger in Cape Town right now. Challenges, yeah. A few years ago, I'd never heard of the word semigration. It wasn't in anybody's vocabulary. But it is now, and the shifts are markedly apparent. We refer to it as the new great trick, reverse gear version, as everyone's going down as opposed to going up. This pattern of semigration, I don't see it changing in the short term, and I think it's already changed the landscape of real estate in South Africa if you look at the disparities between the provinces. Another major factor in the current marketplace is obviously interest rates. It's just impacted in our sector, particularly the first-time home buyer market, more in the last year than any other sector. And yes, it's a cycle. What goes up must come down, and what goes down must go up. But despite the forecast being sort of cloudy and stormy weather, I'm going to borrow one of Bruce's terms. I'm a realistic optimist, and I believe that every cloud has a silver lining. A word of caution on that: please don't share that with the ruling party. The silver lining might end up being nationalized or end up in Saxonwald. But in all seriousness, I do see major opportunities, particularly in rentals, albeit with a few caveats. And again, this is just my opinion. The rental market has and continues to grow and strengthen in 2024. Even on our own stats, we saw double-digit 20% plus growth in both our rental book numbers and income, reflecting very similar figures to what you've said in terms of increases in average rental as well. Some of that may be inflationary, and sure, I know it's anecdotal, but have a look at the rest of the stats in the rental industry. Rentals are rising. So where do we look for opportunities? You've got people who are far more experienced in this section, in this particular field. The buy-to-let market to me is an area that we're looking at, actively involved in. And I think when it's tied to new developments, it's real. It's happening right now. It's a good place to grow. Rentals, and particularly managed rentals. And I'm going to add something to this: rentals with nurturing and care. Very different to, I think, sometimes the way rentals have been done. They provide stability and a great annuity-based income for our agents and our firms. As a group, we were sort of a latecomers to the rental market, but we've shifted focus massively, and I think focus is going to be a thing all of our rental operators need to look at. It can't be a poor cousin. I think in today's terms, a shark supporter. It can't be a poor cousin. It has to be a focused element to your business and has to have its own champions. Rentals, to me, also a great method of stock control, if you want to look at it from a sales team. And again, using our own stats in the 2023 market, we saw a clear rise in certain rentals returning to sales. And because we'd nurtured those rentals, they stayed on our books, and we converted the clients across into the sales side. And again, I'm going to keep stressing that nurturing and care of landlords and tenants. I think it's going to ensure sales opportunities stay with us. There's a few things we have to do to make sure that happens, and one of them is ensuring that our service remains superior. I'm going to borrow something from one of Bruce's books, a book to me that should be mentioned earlier, and I think there's a few being given away today. Should be reading for anyone in business in South Africa. And it's a quote again from Adrian Gore. I was glad to see Bruce quoted him as well. Went something along these lines: if it's not Armageddon, you must be building. It's an obvious conclusion. If folks are worried, prices of opportunities are typically undervalued. So if you can, you should either be building or buying. Says easy, does hard, I know. And again, many people today may say they don't have the luxury of being able to buy books due to resources or finances. Fine, then let's talk about building. Organically growing your rental book is a little bit like planting fruit trees. It takes a long time and it's a labor of love. But it does bear fruit, and it bears fruit generally in all weather conditions, sometimes maybe a little bit less and more. Each rental you add and nurture is also not just building your business asset portfolio. And Johan, compliments to WeconnectU. It's lovely to see the way the language of rentals has changed with the advent of WeconnectU. We talk about assets, we talk about portfolios, we talk about management. It's the professionalization of the rental industry. And as someone who's been involved in business sales recently of franchises, both in equity in its entirety, I have evidence. And again, folks, you're sure it's anecdotal, but I'm sure anybody else involved in business sales would reflect a similar picture. Businesses that we've sold with a strong rental book, the rental book makes up such a massive component of the value of that business. And if you're looking at building your business, look at your business as an asset. It's not just something that brings you income every month. It's something from a retirement point of view, you're engaged in the business, you're not married to it. But if you want to divest yourself of that business, you want to get some value out of it. Rentals, wow, big addition. I do believe the face of the rentals industry has changed. So this is my 32nd year in the industry. I've been in the industry more than half of my life now. And another analogy I'm going to draw from one of Bruce's books is farming. And Bruce comes from a farming family. And he said, we have this romanticized image of a farmer. It's this guy with khaki shorts and a hat on a tractor with a border collie running and plowing a field. It doesn't exist in agriculture anymore. Agriculture is now, it's big business. It's run on scale, efficiencies, tools, technology, and good people, as always. And for years, the image of a rental business was sort of the sole practitioner behind a poorly lit desk with a ledger book, where they must take advanced technology in the office was a Baker-like phone and sometimes an Excel spreadsheet. That's changed. It's a brave new world, and one in which the ability to scale rapidly and cost effectively is a given. We need asset managers who are highly trained and have tools that enable efficiencies for their customers, and trained and geared to compete in a competitive space that's becoming more and more competitive and putting more and more pressure on returns and commissions. And I think it needs to stay high touch, high tech, and note the order there: high touch first. It's not just about having the tools; it's also selecting the right tools and executing them with the right people, not just getting caught up with new, bright, shiny stuff. And yeah, I know nobody's said it yet, but I'm sure it's going to come up a few times today. I do believe if you aren't harnessing the capabilities of AI and baking these into your business planning and thinking, not just strapping it on here and there, this is something that's going to take away some of the drudge work, and it chews time and allows. And bringing that in will allow asset managers to focus on the key elements that our clients value. Yeah, gone are the days also, somebody mentioned email a moment ago, where you could send an email with 12 fonts, 9 emojis, and a very unclear message. That asset manager role, same thing, if you employed a doctor or a stockbroker, would that type of email be acceptable? Advice: look at your business critically, all aspects, warts and all, then change what needs changing. And you have to be a frothing at the mouth service driver with all your people. Sorry, a lot to say there, but in terms of this, are we in a crisis? Yeah, this is South Africa. We're always in a crisis. It's not the types of crises that change. And using a quote, Winston Churchill's, which I used during COVID, I don't know how many times: never let a good crisis go to waste. Businesses will stand the test of time with those agile enough to pivot and embrace this new rental world with open arms. Constant change, that's what real estate's about. We're facing headwinds, tack into the wind, not just to survive, but to thrive. We're going to keep getting lemons thrown at us, and we need to making lemonades, because the lemons aren't going to stop coming.
Brilliant. Thanks, Barry. I'm going to now go over to Alan, has been in the industry just as long, but he's a bit more fortunate. He's sitting in Cape Town. The Cape Town is what they see as the darling of the property market at the moment, with high demand on sales and high demand on rentals. Alan, give us your take on your approach in the current market, and if it's any different for anybody sitting in Johannesburg today.
Hi, Johan. Hi, Bruce, everybody. But as you said, Johan, we have been in business for some time, since 1984, and we started out in the development, the marketing of developments, specifically golf estate developments, which took me through 4 of the provinces. Started out in Natal with the first golf estate development, Selborne Park. From there, we relocated to Johannesburg. We were appointed by the Jonic JCI Group to do Dainfur up there, and then they had a development in Mpumalanga, the Nelspruit Golf Course. And then Jonic said they've got this little wine farm in Cape Town that they think they'll possibly do a wine estate, a golf estate on this wine estate, and would we be interested in having a look at it? Little did I know that it was across the road from a prison, and but nevertheless, we came down to Cape Town and launched the marketing of Steenberg Golf Estate, which was a phenomenal success. And then that was followed by Atlantic Beach Estate up on the West Coast. And in all those years, it's about 16 to 20 years, we concentrated purely on sales and didn't look at rentals at all. Then in about 2010, we were approached by the Rabi Property Group to do all the sales and marketing of the development of Century City. They had acquired Century City, which was a new suburb in Cape Town. They had acquired that from Nedbank, and based on our success at Atlantic Beach, they wanted us to market their new developments there. And that was our intro into the rental market. As I said, up until then, we were only doing sales, but now that we were selling sectional title developments, we were obliged, and I emphasize the word obliged, to now do rentals for our investors who were buying there, and not only do rentals, actually get involved in managing the body corporates, which we had never done before. Well, it wasn't 2 years later where I thought, no, this definitely is a grudge business, as you said, Johan. That's how we viewed it. And I managed to entice our rental manager to please take the business. We had about 200 rental properties on the books, and we were managing 600 odd sectional title units. I said to him, you can have the business, just take it away from me. We want to concentrate on sales. And I gave away that business. It was a few years later where we actually, the penny dropped, and thank goodness I realized that rentals need not be a grudge business if it is managed properly with the right systems. And sometime after that, I bumped into and had a meeting with your brother Skulk, and he introduced me to the world of rental asset management. And that literally turned our business around. And we now see rentals as an integral part of our business. And it feeds off of our sales business, and our sales feeds off of the rental business. It has now become the darling, to use your word, of our business, because we've got a lifetime client there. With sales, you sell a purchaser a property. If you're only in the sales business, you might not deal with that purchaser again for another 5 or 7 years. But when you're managing assets for investors, it's an ongoing relationship, both with the landlord and with the tenants. So it's opened up a whole new field for us, which we are eternally thankful that we are now playing in that market. And Johan, last year, just part of my estate planning, I had our business valued, and the rental division has increased the value of our business by 8 million rand, the asset value. So that's a big amount of money, which, as I said, we gave away a few years earlier. And I'm really thankful that we have, with these right systems now, been able to turn this into a very profitable business.
Alan, thank you for sharing. I'm going to try to summarize what I've heard from yourself and Barry. Is first of all, the opportunity is there. It should not be a grudge service. It should be a clear focus, especially in the current market environment. But there's a critical thing. The industry in the past has always been focused on what they call the cash cow, the sales business. And yes, it will always typically potentially yield higher monthly profits. But thank you for sharing that real life stat about the value, asset value of your business with building rental. I think that mindset of, are you building a cash cow or are you building an asset today? It's a key incentive for everybody listening today that potentially in the past were, let's call it, more sales-oriented focused, chasing the potential higher profits. But there's a massive opportunity, and again, especially in the current market environment, to give that rentals the attention it requires. And the benefit is you are not only building annuity income within uncertain times, you're building asset values. You spoke about estate planning for life. So thank you for that. I'm going to land and say, guys, there's opportunity and there's a massive carrot. But to be able to seize that opportunity, we need to understand who is the customer and what is his problems that we as an industry should try to solve at a profit, as Donnie referred to earlier. So I'm going to ask Neil Peterson. Neil is the founder and chief in charge of the Real Estate Investment Magazine. He lives, breathes, and also educates the investors today in the market. And I think there should be nobody better to help us to understand the real needs of the investor and some of the current market challenges that property managers should be aware of to be able to structure their value offering to address those as well and add that extra bit of value. So Neil, the word in a landlord is that thing that I hear often, and I cringe if I hear it. And yes, our clients are landlords, but long before they became a landlord, they were an investor. And like any investor, they have needs of an investor. Chat to us about this phenomenon of a landlord and an investor, and what the real needs are of our investors and what they are looking for in property managers today.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much for inviting me, Johan. Really excited to address the audience. I mean, we've been around for 17 years, believe it or not. I came in as a private investor, and a lot of the stuff that I've applied to my business today and offering a service to you, the industry, was obviously being a private investor myself. Let's talk a little bit about the investor per se. And as Johannes said, I've been very fortunate to be exposed to a number of people locally in the industry who are leaders, who are investors, who are managing assets, and typically, at the end of the day, it's got to work from a financial perspective. So effective property management at the end of the day is where the rubber really hits the road for any kind of managing any property. Effective property management contributes to tenant satisfaction, property appreciation, and overall profitability for the investor. So it's not without its challenges. You're dealing with difficult tenants, maintaining the property condition, and you balancing those very important multiple financial obligations. And as we heard this morning, from Dani explaining, the different versions of how we can do that. So I think if we employ the term rental asset managers instead of property managers, we then characterize individuals that are tasked with proactive management of property assets. You really make them dedicated to optimizing the performance and the value of each asset within a portfolio. So yes, and if you look at a typical asset manager, the focus extends beyond individual properties. I mean, it's based on, we spoke a little bit earlier on about sort of supply and demand. And when there's high demand and limited supply, rental prices increase. So other things are the economic conditions. We spoke about inflation, interest rates, etc. Location, and obviously immigration has created, more better performing market sectors. And yes, this is ongoing, and we're going to go through multiple property cycles, and we're always going to be challenged financially. So I just want to sort of lock into a little bit of the investor itself. And, I use myself also as an example that manages assets myself. and then the question would be, well, why is that? And I think the most important thing, for a property or asset manager, if you want to improve and grow or get an investor on your side, you really need to understand that investors' needs, the age analysis of their properties, how those properties are performing. We've noticed that in the last sort of 5 years or so, if you've purchased the property recently, we're going to probably find, and that could be, and I say recent in the last, say, 7 years, we probably find that those properties are highly leveraged. There's a bond against them, and there's a number of other costs, and so therefore, to get into a situation where it's cash flow positive and where we manage these ongoing utilities that are increasing at an ongoing rate, and levies and all the other electricity costs, etc., which impacts both sides. And if we don't get sort of control of that, it really, we need to understand it. And I think that's really what we need to understand. Where is the investor stroke landlord, where are they based? If it's a portfolio of properties which are 20 years and older, the cost challenge tends to be slightly less. And if we start looking, and we've discussed all the things that, in terms of what's impacting. I mean, we've seen a number of players come into sort of the prop tech who've tried to disrupt the sector through pure cost. And we saw failures in that particular one because it seemed that business model was not successful. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be somebody else new that's going to come along and disrupt. And my message to you, and I think that WeconnectU play a fantastic role. I think if we look at property management software and tech that's out there, it's probably the leaders that are in the property management field. They're the most successful area of prop tech today. So I think WeConnectU's platform plays a critical role, I think, for investors. However, we still need to get the investor mindset to shift, to move from that Excel spreadsheet onto using more software. So,
Look, I wanna use that point. I wanna ask you, sorry to interrupt. I wanna ask you there. If we say that the investors are investors first before we've made them landlords, and we get into a point that they say, but I'll rather manage myself. Now, maybe I'm going to share a short slide just to confirm what you've just said. I'm just going to quickly share a slide here to confirm the stat that you've just mentioned about the investors starting or continuing to potentially manage self. This is research we've done over the last 2 years to ask clients who, let me just stop there. Sorry, I've just shared the wrong slide there. Give me one moment. There we go. Why are you losing mandates? And what you've just said has been confirmed with the research. The highest, almost 30% of clients are losing mandates to the client themselves. I don't think that investors go into property to work with tenants, broken geysers, and maintenance management of a door that doesn't open. Isn't that because we are missing their need? Investor, basic 101, they invest for a return. They would like to reduce their risk. They would like good reporting. They would like guidance to help grow their portfolio. Do you feel that the industry is doing that? Or are we seen by investors as merely administrators to find the tenant, collect the rent, do maintenance management? What is your, if you can answer, help me there, because I think the fact that there's a trend where potential investors saying, but listen, man, I'm not getting the value here, and I'll rather opt to manage self. I don't think they started with that in mind. I think they end up there because the potential value gap that exists.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you want to grow scale and you've got a big property portfolio, there's no ways. And I would say anything north of 3, 4, 5 properties, you don't want to self-manage. You don't want to get the call at midnight and say, fix a toilet and, all kind of problems and fix geysers and that kind of stuff. So that's certainly something that you do not want to get involved in. And yes, look, I think it comes down to the property manager stroke asset manager really getting to understand their purpose and how they can help and make a difference for the investor. And I don't think there's sort of a silver bullet approach. There's not a one size fits all approach. And I think this is where the asset managers must either target certain particular investors that own a large portfolio. I mean, if it's a standalone building, for example, it is a lot easier to manage and to bring your management costs down. It's much easier to do that if it's all in one sort of location. So my feeling is that investors are absolutely open. If they can get a deal where they could get the value return in terms of on the balance sheet, they absolutely would pass it over. And there's evidence of that all the time. We've got to address this investor, and certainly the industry can help. And I agree, it's not just offering an administrative system, it's really offering something of significant value. There's a mindset change. There's an absolute mindset change. And I think it comes from engaging with the investor and really getting to understand what they're trying to achieve and where they can bring that value. And remember, you get paid for helping people. So, and the most reliable source of information you can get is through observation. So you've got to go on site and really have a look around and understand what is that investor trying to achieve and where you can bring the value to that. And
we're just checking the time. Apologies. Maybe
yes.
Just a closing remark on the investor and the core needs.
End of the day, the investor wants to get a return on investment. That's it. They cannot do it alone. They need to have partners in the business. They do need property asset managers. I can tell you now, they do not enjoy managing their own assets. And if you could bring the value, they would absolutely employ you any day of the week. So I think that's and I always say that, it's sort of collaboration wins wars. We don't want to be at a situation where we're in a tense situation about rental collection and that. Communicate all the time. No communication is no money, and it's the biggest enemy of money.
Neil, thank you for that. I really excited to hear about the word asset management being used, the investor being used. That's something we're passionate about, something we see as a massive opportunity for the industry to pivot and add that value that they're already delivering, maybe just in a better way. So we spoke about the opportunity, we spoke about the client. Next up is the competitors. So first of all, hopefully, if we understand the needs of our client, the client will not become our competitor. Because they will understand and see the value that the industry can offer. But next up, to understand the industry is, who are your competitors? Who are the movers and shakers, and why are they growing? So I'm going to ask Alan Asher and CJ Vogel and Etienne to join me. So from WeconnectU perspective, we see obviously a host of portfolios and the growth of the portfolios. And there's three things that we can identify that really characterize these group of business owners or portfolios that are rapidly growing. Number one, it might sound obvious, but number one, they do have a clear focus on their business or on their rental portfolio. It's not a growth service. It's a clear business focus for them as one characteristic. Secondly, it is those portfolios that are well aligned with the developers and getting the benefit of these bulk stock downloads into their portfolio. And lastly, business owners with a clear acquisition strategy, going out and hunting and buying rental portfolios to fast track the growth of their business. I know that there's a lot of audience members that would want to understand, but listen, man, how do I get myself aligned with those developers? Or how do I actually go about acquiring books? So I've asked the three of them to join me. First, Alan said that they are aligned with this quite a big developer called Robbie, and has been with a few others as well. So Alan, you've got a host of experience in just managing the relationship, or first of all, landing the relationship, and then managing the relationship with the developer. Take us through it. How should an agency today approach a developer to be able to service their needs and make sure that they can obviously grow in bulk going forward?
Sure, Johan, thanks. Yeah, we have to position ourselves that our rental department is an asset to the sales, the marketing of new developments. Now, typically, the developments that we do for the Robbie Group, we're selling those 18 months in advance, ahead of completion, and they are sold out before construction has even started. But we are in a fortunate position now that most of our buyers, more than 50% of our buyers, are investors that are buying there because they know that with a lot of certainty that they're going to be able to rent out their property when they take occupation and transfer. And we put those tenants in place 3 months before transfer. We're busy sourcing the tenants so that by the time the investor takes transfer of his property, the tenant's already in place and he's got a rental income coming from day one. So we have now been able to position our rental business as a draw card to attract developer business, because without the rentals in place, it's a lot more difficult to attract investors. There's the uncertainty. Am I going to be able to rent out my property? Admittedly, we are riding on the wave here in Cape Town, where right now, as we stand now, we don't have a single vacant property to be able to rent. The rental demand in Cape Town is phenomenal. The rental increases have been great. And that all spins off to the developer, because now the developer has a happy investor and he's going to buy in the next development again. So it really has helped our sales division, and the two live off each other now, Johan, and it's united our sales and our rental team, our staff-wise. Our colleagues are all cohesive as one team towards the same goal. So it's been great.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Alan, for sharing. CJ, you sit in a similar situation just in Gauteng. So first of all, how did you land the developer relationships, and what's your advice on how to manage these relationships to again get the benefit of the bulk stock download to grow your portfolio?
Thank you for the opportunity, Johan. I must first of all say it's nice to hear that our colleagues, regardless where you are in the country, are facing the same obstacles and challenges. Makes me feel better about myself and my business. When it comes to the management of developers' properties, obviously due to the volumes they provide us, we do it at a lower rate, but it is still viable to do so. Sometimes I wonder whether it is a blessing or a curse, but at the end of the day, it puts the bread on the table. The reason why I'm saying that is if it only takes one property to be mismanaged, and it will destroy the relationship between the agency and the developer. And for that reason, you will lose all future sales and rentals from that developer. So it is of utmost importance to keep your finger on the pulse of, well, not only the developer's properties, all of your properties at all times. Otherwise, your lucrative rental portfolio can turn into a sloppy business overnight. Luckily, WeconnectU creates the platform for real-time communication and transparency. And it, especially when it comes to maintenance-related inquiries, it eliminates the possibility of a blame game. So it most definitely safeguards ourselves as agents.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that, CJ. So the other key characteristic of the portfolios that's growing is those with a very active and strategic acquisition strategy. Etienne, you've been in the forefront of that in your portfolio. You guys have grown a significant portfolio through acquisition and are continue to do so. Give us some fundamentals that you as a business owner should have in place when you follow this acquisition strategy, and give us some insight into the finances. Does it really pay to pay these massive amounts for the rental books?
Johan, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to discuss this matter. We took a business decision some time ago to go the acquisition route as such, to build our business, and to do it on a one-by-one case of trying to find management agreements to grow your business would have taken us years to get where we are currently in the game. So when we investigate an acquisition, we build our business case on 6 pillars. I know your company has got 5 pillars, but we've got 6. The first one is there should be an active strategy that needs to be in place that someone specifically drives. Now, meaning in that strategy, you need to identify the industry trends. You've referred previously to the generation rent section. I think the trend currently there is about 64% of the population that prefers to rent than to buy. Now, that is one of the specific trends that you need to look into. The other one in the strategy is to identify your competitors and, of course, their strategy. It doesn't make sense to approach someone that's got the same strategy that you've got and they want to buy you, so you check their strategy. The further point there is to identify the target market, and then from that, you develop a unique selling strategy, meaning how do I go about selling our value proposition to a potential seller? That is the first pillar of the acquisition strategy. The second one is to understand the valuation method. One must remember that this is not an asset that you physically buy with a value. You need to develop and build a valuation model. And then, of course, you doing the model yourself should understand the methodology behind the numbers. And so is the person driving the strategy. That person needs to make sure that he understands the value should make business sense for both the buyer and the seller. So the methodology about the numbers is very important. The third pillar that we use is basically the due diligence process that you need to plan. The quality of the commercial and residential book is important. Fee structures, arrears, bad debt, commissions. Then quality of mandate agreements needs to be taken into consideration. Remember, you buy a biological asset and you do not know what the yield of that harvest will be once that mandate is expired. So in this due diligence process, if you've got 10 units that you want to buy and 9 of them belongs to one investor, and you lose that one investor for some other reason, you're losing the 90% of the sale. So that should form part of your due diligence process. The fourth pillar that we use is a specific strategy to manage the handover and the migration process. So that can become quite a complex process, specifically where you hand over the documents and data and a transfer of all the deposits and so on from the one account to the other one. The other strategy of the handover should be transparency in your whole data capturing and administration team. I think your staff don't want to get surprises and be overloaded with work. So the migration process should be aligned with their processes in the back office. And then also aligned to the processes of WeconnectU. I mean, Johan, you guys got a team specifically with the onboarding of clients onto your platform. So that's very important that we be aligned what we're doing, what is expected from us, and how we manage that specific handover in the migration process. Then the second last point in the acquisition strategy is you need to consider your existing staff complement risk. There's always a risk in losing staff that don't like change. Change is a very strange thing in any industry, but that forms part of the strategy, and that is to train and motivate your staff so that they stay on board. You should never overload the staff in their current roles. So the other part of the training is the multitasking kind of model. And one must remember that the economy of scale also taught all of us that more can be achieved with less bodies. The final point in the strategy is that your existing business must have a solid system and processes in place to able to scale without any disruption. So I think when you disrupt your data capturing and admin team, there is a high risk of staff leaving. So in this whole platform of solid systems and processes, our frontline managers need to operate on a platform from where they can populate agreements and all kinds of supporting documents. And then, of course, we've got a different back office team that solely focus on the WeconnectU Red Rabbit and the credit report analysis and so on. So in a nutshell, that is what we focus on when doing acquisitions. And we see that is one of the only fast growing opportunities currently in the market, Johan. Thank you.
Etienne, thank you for that. I think we can have a separate webinar purely on acquisition of books to grow your portfolio, and maybe something we should consider. I would like to wrap up our session by giving some reality as well. It's not all good. There are some challenges and there are some effort drivers. And I would like to ask Loveness to come in. Loveness is the rental manager for the Easy Property Group. They are part of the Easy Equity Group, and they've got really a unique business model. But she's in the trenches every single day, fighting the real battles of property management. And I would like to ask you to join in. Loveness, if you can maybe just switch your camera on and your mic. Just give us a brief overview. I see we are running a bit over time. Just give us a brief overview of some of the reality of the challenges that the property managers are going to be facing if they enter this market and should consider.
Okay, thank you so much, Johan. Unfortunately, I don't have much time, but you do see that the current economic conditions are exerting pressure on businesses. And regardless of the industry, any business operating today is going to have to navigate some tough terrain, and businesses in the rental market are no exception. So we've got several industry-specific challenges that portfolio managers or property managers need to contend with. I'm only going to touch a few since I'm out of time. The first one, the biggest effort drivers would have to be area or debt management and vacancy management. Remember that the biggest objective behind property investment is getting a return on investment. So when we look at arrears and we look at vacancies, these two both present as a loss of income to the landlord and to the business as well. So with the current economic conditions putting pressure on people's pockets, it presents an affordability or creditworthiness challenge, which poses a huge problem for property managers. Then when you now look on the side of the property managers, they now need to put more effort and creativity in their rental collection and area management, as well as in their tenant retention strategies and vacancy management. So number one would definitely be vacancy management and debt management. And then the second challenge that property managers are facing these days is the regulatory framework in which the rental market is. The legal framework is perpetually evolving, and you find that property managers need to keep abreast of legal trends and regulations to protect their tenants, to protect their landlords, and to protect their business. This talks specifically to compliance with the PPRA. It talks specifically to adherence to the Rental Housing Act, alignment with Rental Tribunal, knowledge of the Consumer Act, as well as the CSOS Act. The legal framework directly or indirectly affects the property manager. There's a lot of risk, a lot of business risk on the side of the property manager. I'm sure you agree with me, Johan, that if there is no compliance, there's huge financial repercussions for the landlord if correct procedures are not taken. And this results, we can see the results with delinquent tenants and even with evictions. If you decide to take the law into your own hands and you lock the tenant out, there are serious repercussions when you're now trying to evict that tenant. And then I also want to touch on the challenge that is currently presenting itself on cyber risk, effectively managing cyber risk. We've seen in recent cases that cyber fraud is on the rise. There are forged documents everywhere, many phishing attempts. And as property managers, we work with sensitive information and we handle huge client funds. So of course, POPI Act is there to help us in managing sensitive information and all of that. But as a property manager, you would need to step up. You need to step up and create an extra buffer against cyber risk. Property managers definitely need to be vigilant, and they need to step up in managing cyber risk in order to protect the tenants and to protect the business as well. A solution that we might have around that is investment in cyber training. It's very important to invest in cyber security training and also to incorporate cyber security measures within the business. That is now imperative. It's no longer something that you can debate or decide on because the threat out there is very real. very real.
Good.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just looking at our time, Loveness. I do not want to cut you short. Luckily, hopefully, we are getting to that cyber training if we stick to our time at the end of the day. I'm gonna end off there and say, so to property managers out there, I think it's clear the opportunity is amazing in the rental game. We have to make sure we understand our customer, and you have to have a clear growth strategy to make sure you reap the benefits of the current market conditions. But yes, there are some serious effort drivers, and you have to be cognizant of those when you build your business plan, your strategy, to make sure you do run an efficient and profitable business.